Welcome back to a chapter a day. Happy Tuesday. And we will be doing a review of the book of 1 Samuel. We are finished. We finished it yesterday, all 31 chapters. So I just made some few points that we'll read just restate, and of course I may go into some details with some of the events, and others we'll just touch it as we go on. So we began the first book of Samuel, chapter 1, with the introduction of Hannah, who was married to a man called Elkanah, and he had another wife called Peninnah. And of course, Peninnah was less favored than Hannah, but Peninnah could bear children, Hannah could not. So she was very, very miserable. She went to the temple, and while she was praying, her lips were moving, but no sound was coming from her voice. When Samuel saw her, he thought she was drunken with wine. He approached her and asked her when she's going to stop drinking. And she said, "Sir, I have not drinking any wine. I don't drink, but my heart is so sad, and I'm talking to God." And Samuel told her whatever it is that she was petitioning God, that he prayed she will get her answer. And she had promised God as well that if he does answer her prayer, that she would give the child, which is what she was praying for. She wanted a child, that she would give him back to God, which means she would have him grow up in the temple. So God answers her prayer, and she's given a son. And after she's weaned him, and I'm thinking weaning should be completed about the age of 2, maybe 3, and she took him back to the temple to live with Eli. Now, Eli was the priest, and he had 2 sons called Hophni and Phinehas, which were not at all priest material. But for some reason, he refused to reprimand them and to put them out of service. They should not have been serving, because they were stealing from the people and committing adultery with the women at the temple door. And Eli knew about this, but he did not reprimand them as he should have, and God was not happy with him. And God sent a prophet to talk to him about that, and told him because of his negligence, his seed will be cut off. He will not have a seed to continue on his name. So what happened was that the Philistines came against Israel as usual. That was like their seemingly lifelong enemy. And during that fight or battle, Hophni and Phinehas were both killed, and the ark of God was taken. Now, when Eli got word that the ark was taken, not so much that his sons were killed, because I think he already knew it was coming, and he maybe thought it was deserving too, but it was his fault. The ark was captured, and when Eli heard it, Eli fell over dead. His daughter-in-law was about to give birth, and when she heard about it too, not so much that her husband was dead, but that the ark was taken, they all realized, hey, God is gone from this place. And she had a terrible labor, and she died in childbirth. Whew, lots of calamities there. Okay, so after that, God started to punish the Philistines because they had no right with the ark. The ark was something sacred. It was a sacred symbol of God with the Israelites. It had nothing to do with anyone else, and they had no right to have it in their possession. They put it into their temple with their statue god, and their statue fell over in front of the ark. Twice they did it, and the second time the arms of their statue were broken off and resting on the threshold, and the head was broken off as well. So that kind of told them, hey, you know what? We are not dealing with any old piece of equipment. We need to get rid of this thing. So not in addition to that, they were getting boils or something in their bodies, on their bodies. God was punishing them with physical infirmities as well. And when they consulted their priests and their wise men, they found out, yeah, the God of the Israelites is not happy with you all. You all need to return the ark and a gift to go with it. Don't send it back empty. So that is exactly what they did. They made golden mice, I think 5 golden mice, and 5 golden emeralds. Emeralds were the things that they were stricken with. Kind of odd, but that's what they did. And the 5 represented the 5 cities of the Philistines and the 5 lords that ruled those cities. Okay, so now Samuel has decided, well, the ark is returned and the priests take the ark. The Levites are the only ones that are supposed to touch the or do anything in connection with the ark and the tabernacle. So when the ark is returned on the cart from the Philistines, the priests take the ark off of the cart and put it inside, maybe where it was before, or some place of proper place for it. And they also opened the box that had the golden mice and the emeralds. But I think some other men went in who were not supposed to even touch the ark, opened it up to see what was inside of it, and they fell dead. So now the Israelites are afraid of the ark and saying, who can contend with God, you know? So Samuel offers up offerings and sacrifices on their behalf. He says it's because y'all are not doing what God wants you to do. So after God receives the sacrifices, the people pledged that they would start serving God, and God appeased their stop their death, because they were just dying off, everyone who maybe came in contact with the ark. Okay, so now we have Samuel's sons. Samuel is grown up, and I'm saying this, children live what they learn. He's been around Eli and his sons for quite some time, and he's been seeing and hearing what has been going on with Eli's sons and seeing Eli's response to them. And guess what? He trained up his sons in the same poor way, ill-disciplined, and they were doing just like what Eli's sons were doing. So the people were saying, you know what, we don't have any proper priests and representations to God for us, so we want a king. Give us a king just like the rest of the nations. So that's what they took to Samuel. Samuel went to God and said, look at how these people are behaving. They don't want a prophet anymore. They don't want priests. They want a king. So God said, go ahead, give it to them. They are not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. So first of all, tell them what it's going to be like to have a king, and then see if they decide they still want one. So Samuel laid out for them as God gave it to them. He's going to take your lands. He's going to take your children. He's going to take the best of everything you have. And you're going to cry to God later on, and God won't hear you. They said, okay, hey, we don't care. We want a king. So I guess now God gave Samuel instructions to go find their first king. And it so happened that he was the son of a Benjamite, and his father had sent him out to look for some lost donkeys. And so God had told Samuel he would be coming into his vicinity to look for him, because they felt that Samuel might be able to help them, he and his servant, find these donkeys. And when they came to Samuel, Samuel invited them to a dinner, and he took Saul apart and he anointed him as king. And then he took him back to the people, and they did they called all the tribes together so Samuel could show them, hey, this is whom God is choosing. And the lot fell on Saul, who was hiding someplace, but they went and they found him and they brought him, and it was shown he was the king. And of course, some people must have been saying, are you crazy? Now Saul was tall, okay? So they said when he stood up, he was taller than anyone else around. So some people may have been saying, oh yeah, good, he'll make a perfect king. And others were like, are you serious? He was just hiding. We had to go get, what sort of king is that hides? So then a battle came up with the Philistines, and Saul was able to show them how valiant he could be in defeating the Philistines. And then the people changed their minds and said, yes, he's worthy to be king, and he was officially king. And so that was. Now, Saul's son Jonathan went out at one time to fight the Philistines without letting anyone know. And what happened was that when the news was given to Saul, Saul took the credit of that defeat. That was one of the first signs to let to let us know that Saul is starting to act not right. Okay, he didn't give Jonathan the glory for what he did. He took it himself. In addition to that, he did not wait for Samuel to come to him to give him any type of advice as to whether or not he ought to go on and fight the Philistines. Instead, he took it upon himself to burn offerings, which was not in his league. He was not a priest or a Levite. He was not supposed to do that. After he did the burnt offering on the altar, then comes Samuel, and he's trying to blame Samuel for not coming at the time he was supposed to, and blaming the people. And of course, he just did the blame game. That was another sign. Saul was kind of, yeah, this is not working out. So, he also did not have the people fighting with proper weapons. Only he and his son Jonathan had proper weapons, because the Philistines had kind of robbed them of all of their good stuff. Of course, they're not going to leave things for them to fight the Philistines with. So they took away all their metal. There was no one who could make any kind of spears and swords for them, except for he and Jonathan somehow they had. So this is how they went out to fight. So one day, Jonathan took his armor bearer aside, and they decided to go after the Amalekites for themselves, or the Philistines. At the same time, Saul didn't know that Jonathan had left and gone to fight the Philistines by himself. And this is the second time Jonathan is doing that. And Saul makes this decree to his soldiers that no one is to eat anything at all until everything is finished with fighting off the Philistines. The men are hungry, so they come upon Jonathan, who didn't hear what Saul said about them not eating, and Jonathan takes his stick and sticks it into a hive of honey, and he puts it to his mouth and eats it. And I guess then they told him, but then he said, hey, look at me, I feel fine now that I have eaten. Sugar tends to kind of liven you up, I guess. But now, then after that, Saul's soldiers, they just started grabbing the animals and eating them just like that when they were not supposed to do so. So, okay. Then Saul finds out what's happening, how they're just eating the animal blood, and that's breaking God's law. He calls them together. He says, come on, and you could eat, bring the animals here and slaughter them in one place. And I guess then they ate it proper after that. Now, Saul wanted Jonathan killed for what he had done unknowingly, but the people said, no, Jonathan just went and defeated all of these Philistines while we weren't even there to help him, and you want to kill him because he didn't know about your decree? So they said no, and he spared Jonathan that day. Then let's see. Then God told Samuel to send Saul to fight the Amalekites, because when the Israelites were coming from Egypt at one time and earlier on, the Amalekites did not give them entry to their land. They didn't. When they asked them permission to go through, they refused them. So God said, go take vengeance on the Amalekites and destroy everything and everyone. What did Saul do? Saul disobeyed God's command, and he kept back the king, and he kept back certain of the livestock, and then he said that was supposed to be for sacrifice. Not to mention when Samuel came to him and asked him, hey, what is this I'm hearing? Is that sheep I'm hearing? You are not supposed to keep anything. He said, well, the people, of course, there goes the blame game again, strike three, okay? The people were saying, that they want to make a sacrifice to their God, and I was afraid of them. Yeah, right. Of course, lying and just trying to put blame where he doesn't want to take responsibility. So Samuel tells him, you know what? That's it. God said he's not going to have you as king anymore. He's taking away the kingdom from you. He's going to give it to someone else. And so Samuel said, that's it. I'm out of here. He will not see Samuel again. And that was the last he saw of Samuel. At this time, I guess God's spirit had totally left Saul, and an evil spirit, they say, came upon him, and his mind was just not right. So sometimes he would maybe just go crazy, ranting, raving, and his servant said, you know what? I think music is going to soothe this savage beast. So they decided to send for David, whom they heard could play well, and they brought him to Saul, and Saul but before that, let me just back up a little bit. Before that, Samuel was instructed to anoint David as king. So he went to David's father, Jesse, who brought out all his tall, handsome sons before Samuel to parade. And Samuel kept saying, nope, that's not it. That's not him. You have any more? Yeah, I have one out in the field. He's a little ruddy, he's not really anything to look. I can't see him as king. Samuel said, go bring him. And when he brought him, he definitely was the one, and his name was David. So David was anointed by Samuel right there and then to be king. But that didn't happen right away. So Saul has this evil spirit. They sent for David, who they heard was a good harp player, and he was also a valiant, someone who can stand up. He killed a bear and a lion with his bare hands. So they heard some stuff about him. So he came to Saul's court. Saul liked him, and he played music whenever Saul had his mental breakdown. So now David goes back home to his father, and there is a threat to Israel by this huge Philistine by the name of Goliath. So everyone's afraid to fight Goliath because Goliath wants to fight mano a mano, hand to hand. And but the man is 9 cubic feet high. From what I heard, a cubic foot was how much? I think it was 9 feet or 18, some crazy number like that. This man is huge, with his own armor bearer to hold just his shield, and he has his sword and his spear. I was going to fight him, but David, with the Spirit of God in him, came along and said, who is this man cursing at our God, and y'all are just here cowering? Let me at him. And Saul said, you know what, whoever kills him, I'm going to give you my daughter to marry. So David really wasn't going for the daughter. He was just upset that this uncircumcised Philistine was cursing the living God of the Israelites. So he went at him with 5 stones and a sling. When Goliath saw it, he was like, oh, you crazy, what are you sending this little twerp to fight me with a slingshot and stones? What do I look like, a dog? Well, he showed him who was the dog. And he swung that stone in the power of God, and he took Goliath down. And then he took Goliath's own spear, because he didn't have any armor. Saul was trying to get him to wear his bulky old armor, and David said, you know what, I can't put this on. Take it off, put it aside. I'm just going as I am. So he took Goliath's own spear while standing on him, just to tell you how huge the man was. And he cut Goliath's head off, took it over to Saul. And there was a huge celebration, because after Goliath was dead, the other Philistines started to run, and the Israelites ran behind them, and they slaughtered them. So that was a great victory. So of course, in their culture, the women would break out in singing and dancing, and that's what they did. But they were saying Saul slew thousands, but David tens of thousands. So when Saul heard that, what? Do you hear what they're saying? He didn't like that. And you know what? His heart turned against David. So he took the first daughter that he should have given to David and had her marry someone else. And then he goes to tell David, you know what? You're going to have to work for my other daughter's hand, Michal, because he heard Michal liked David. So now he wants 100 Philistine foreskins. But he's hoping David gets killed in the process of getting them. But David is a warrior, and a warrior with God you can't reckon with him. So he goes out with his men, and he brings 200 Philistine foreskins. Now, just the request of that from Saul is just gross. Saul is really off his rockers by even requesting David to do this. So when David brings it back, he gives him his daughter Michal, but then the pursuit of David continues, or begins, I should say. So his daughter has he's leaving no stone unturned to find David. His daughter has to let him out the window to escape Saul. Jonathan has to send arrows in the field to alert him whether to come out or to stay. So his father, he knows that the father is after him to kill him. And Jonathan and Saul had developed a close relationship. David flees to Samuel looking for help. But Saul finds him. He comes up to Samuel, finds him. He starts prophesying and all kinds of crazy behavior. Strips himself, lays down there. And then David has to flee because now Saul knows where he is. He goes to the priest. Ahimelech was the priest at that time. Ahimelech gives him the shewbread, which really was not supposed to be, but they change it every day. So he gave him the stale one. And then he gave him Goliath's sword. Someone was there to see it, and they said, hey, the priest was helping out David. So Saul sends and calls all the priests, kills all the priests. Has the same guy Doeg who said he snitched on David, that he saw him in the temple. He had him kill all the priests and went back to the city, and he and the other soldiers of Saul slaughtered the whole city of Nob. Horrible. And then after that, he realized he can't really stick around. Well, after Ahimelech after he left Ahimelech, he ran to Achish to pretend like he was King Achish was a Philistine, of course. And he didn't think King Achish might have recognized him, but he did. And King Achish said, isn't that David who just killed Goliath and slaughtered all these Philistines? What are you doing here? So David started pretending, foaming at the mouth, and in disgusting kind of way to show he's crazy. But he still didn't stay there. He ran and he hid in several places, several caves, and the people would always rat him out, as they say. Even the place where he helped them. Let's see. The king hadn't taken him in, but he kept running to different caves. I think Ziph was one of the caves he ran to. The Ziphites sold him out. Then, was it the men of is it Gilead? I can't remember. But anyway, when he went to help those people, Keilah, the people of Keilah needed help, and he went and he helped them. And then Saul heard he was in Keilah. Saul was sending to kill him there. And he asked God, are these people going to sell me out? And God said, yeah, they will. So he had to flee. This time he said, after several encounters, close encounters with Saul, he could have killed Saul, but he kept calling Saul God's anointed and saying God will take care of Saul in his own time. So eventually he said, you know what? This madman is going to kill me one day. He runs back to Achish, which is the Philistine king. And Achish gives him a land. I guess he liked David. David was able to maybe to work along with people. Oh, I forgot the part with Nabal before all of this with in between Saul's pursuit of him. He came up and he helped Nabal. I think that maybe have been after he left Achish the first time, because people started following him. So he started to get an army, hundreds of people. He took his parents and he sent them to the king of Moab to keep until everything had settled down. And he had about 600 men following him. So he had his own little army. Came up to Nabal. He was a rich man with a lot of livestock. He sent 10 of his men to watch Nabal's flock, and Nabal had no agreement with David, but then David sent to get payment or food or whatever. Nabal told him no, because Nabal was a rough man. And the next thing, David wants to go kill Nabal and his whole household. The servants tell the wife. The wife tells Nabal. The next day, Nabal falls down dead. David sends and gets the man's wife, Abigail. So he has Abigail for wife. He has another Jezreelitess woman called Ahinoam, and then he has Michal, who he had to run away and leave. So back down to the end now. He runs back to the king of Achish after hiding and being found and all that stuff. Confrontation with Saul, showing him, hey, I could have killed you, but I didn't. Achish gives him a place called Ziklag. He resides in Ziklag. And then One day he goes to fight with the Philistines. He goes with the Philistines to fight, pretending he's with them. But the other Philistines said, we don't want him. He can turn on us anytime. So they send him back. So while they were gone, the Amalekites came, raided their whole city, took away their wives, all their livestock. David went out. He asked the Lord first, Lord, should I go get them back? God said, yeah, go, and you'll recover everything. And so he did. He slaughtered all the Amalekites, got back his wives, got back their children, all the servants got back all their properties, children, everything. And then after that, David went back and he shared all the spoil, the things that they had, the things that they recovered from the Amalekites. He shared with every one of his men, even the ones who didn't go into the battle literally with them, although some were protesting. He said, nope, everybody's going to get a share, whether you were there or not. And he sent to people who weren't even aware that he was out fighting, the people who helped him. He didn't forget them. He sent them gifts from the spoils of the Amalekites. And then Saul went out to war with the Philistines, and just like was predicted by Samuel, I forgot the part with the Saul going to ask the witch of Endor to tell him what would be his situation fighting the Philistines, and she told him, well, he told her to bring up Samuel, well, the spirit that came up looking like Samuel told him, tomorrow you and your sons will be where I am. And that exactly happened. Saul went out to fight with the Philistines. They killed both he, his sons, all his men, and they got killed. Cut their heads off, put their bodies on the walls. So him being king, some of those Israelites that lived in Jabesh Gilead heard about it. The brave men decided to go by night, get the bodies out. They took them and gave them a burning as a burial and mourned for Saul and his son 7 days in honor of him being king. And that was the end of Saul. Whew. So we're going to be going into 2 Samuel chapter 1 next day and hear what continues now that Saul and his sons are dead. The way should be clear for David to pursue his kingship, and we'll see how that takes place. A long review. 31 chapters with a lot of events taking place. So I thank you all for listening. Remember, read for yourselves, make comments, and keep listening because faith comes when we hear God's word. Take care. Bye.